The attic of the old Victorian house was a place rarely visited, a forgotten storage for generations worth of memories and dust. I hadn't intended to find anything specific that day. It was more about killing time and maybe, just maybe, finding a piece of you somewhere among the relics. The air was thick with the scent of aged wood and faded memories. As I sifted through boxes filled with old photographs, worn-out clothes, and assorted knickknacks, my fingers brushed against something wooden and smooth. It was a Ouija board, nestled in a dark corner beneath an old, moth-eaten blanket. The moment I laid eyes on it, a shiver raced down my spine, not from fear, but from a strange sense of destiny. The board was elegantly crafted, its surface a testament to countless sessions that I could only imagine. I felt a pull toward it, an inexplicable connection that urged me to take it downstairs into the living world again. That night, after dinner, the house felt unnervingly quiet, the kind of silence that weighs down on you, thick and heavy. I lit a single candle and placed it on the coffee table beside the Ouija board. The flickering flame cast dancing shadows around the room, and for a moment I hesitated. It wasn't like me to delve into the supernatural, but the loss of you had torn a hole through my logic and skepticism. "Are you there?" I whispered into the darkness, my fingers trembling as they rested lightly on the planchette. For a long moment, nothing happened, and I felt foolish. Then slowly, as though guided by an invisible hand, the planchette began to move. It spelled out HELO. Tears welled up in my eyes. "Is that really you?" I asked, my voice cracking. The response was immediate. "Why, yes." The next few days were a blur. I rushed home after work each evening, eager to communicate with you. It felt like a miracle, a chance to mend my shattered heart. Yet with each session, a shadow grew over me, one that I was too blinded by hope to notice. It was during one of these sessions that David knocked on my door. He had been my rock, my confidant ever since your passing. But when he found me in the dimly lit living room, the Ouija board in front of me, concern darkened his features. "This isn't good for you," he said, his voice low and steady. "You're not yourself anymore." I looked up at him, irritation flaring inside me. "You wouldn't understand. I finally found a way to connect with them again." David glanced at the board, then back to me, his blue eyes filled with worry. "Or something's found a way to connect with you. It's not healthy." His words sparked anger in me, a defensive rage that felt foreign. "You think I'm imagining this? That my grief has made me delusional?" He took a step back, hands raised in a gesture of peace. "I think you're vulnerable, and that thing," he gestured towards the board, "is taking advantage of it." The room seemed to grow colder, the candle's flame flickering as though caught in a sudden draft. David and I stood on opposite sides of an invisible chasm, the Ouija board between us, a conduit to hope for me and a symbol of despair for him. I couldn't understand his fear, not when I was so close to getting a part of you back. Little did I know, I was indeed connecting, just not with you. As the days passed, my obsession with the Ouija board grew, wrapping its tendrils tightly around my psyche. The once comforting presence of your supposed messages began to morph, messages becoming increasingly ominous and unsettling. David's visits dwindled, his concern for me overpowered by frustration and fear. Alone, I delved deeper into the whispers of the Ouija board, losing myself in a sea of enigmatic words and symbols that promised solace but delivered only shadows. The transformation was not just emotional, it was physical. The house, our house, shared with laughter and love, now echoed with an oppressive silence, broken only by whispers that seemed to emanate from the very walls. My nights were sleepless, punctuated by nightmares that left me trembling until dawn. Each morning, I awoke feeling drained, with dark circles under my eyes and a persistent coldness clutching at my heart. It was during this time of darkness and despair that Mrs. Thompson entered my life. The local historian, known for her extensive knowledge of the town's past and its more mystical undercurrents, had heard of my plight through David. One afternoon, she arrived at my doorstep, her small frame bundled in a shawl, eyes peering at me through thick glasses with a mix of concern and determination. I led her into my living room, the Ouija board still resting on the coffee table, the air thick with the scent of stale candle wax and fear. Mrs. Thompson surveyed the room with a keen eye before settling her gaze on the board. "You've opened a door you cannot close on your own," she began, her voice firm, projecting a calm that seemed at odds with the atmosphere of the room. "This isn't your loved one you've been speaking to, my dear. It's something much older, feeding on your grief." Her words were a cold splash of reality, sobering yet terrifying. I felt a surge of anger, not towards her, but at myself for being so naive, so desperate to claw back a semblance of you that I had ignored the signs all along. What am I supposed to do? My voice was a whisper, reflecting my broken resolve. Mrs. Thompson took my hands in hers, her grip surprisingly strong. "There's a way to end this, to sever the connection, but it requires facing the entity, acknowledging its presence, and claiming back your space." Her plan was simple yet daunting. I was to confront the entity through the Ouija board, armed with knowledge of its true nature and an unyielding determination to reclaim my life. David, though initially skeptical, agreed to stand by my side, united by concern and a shared resolve to see me through the darkness. The days leading up to the final seance were charged with a palpable tension. David and I researched, prepared mentally and physically for the confrontation. We transformed the living room into a battleground of wills, symbols of protection adorning the walls, candles ready to pierce the darkness. As dusk settled on the day of reckoning, Mrs. Thompson arrived, her presence a beacon of hope in the encroaching gloom. Together, we sat at the table, the Ouija board between us, and braced ourselves for the confrontation that lay ahead. The candle flames flickered as if stirred by an unseen breath, casting long shadows that danced ominously around the room. The plan was set, our resolve firm. Yet, beneath it all lay an undercurrent of fear, for we were about to challenge an entity that had woven itself into the very fabric of my being. The candlelight cast an eerie glow across the room as we positioned ourselves around the table, the Ouija board lying dormant between us. My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of fear and determination coursing through my veins. Mrs. Thompson's voice cut through the tension, her words a mantra meant to protect and empower us. David's hand found mine, offering strength and solidarity. With a deep breath, I placed my fingers on the planchette, inviting the entity to communicate. The air grew colder, a palpable shift in the atmosphere signaling its arrival. The planchette stirred, slowly at first, then with purpose, spelling out a greeting that sent shivers down my spine. "This ends tonight," I declared, my voice steady despite the turmoil within. The planchette moved rapidly now, spelling out threats and taunts, but I held firm, rooted in my resolve to reclaim my life. Mrs. Thompson chanted softly, her words a balm against the entity's malevolence. David squeezed my hand tighter, a silent pledge of unwavering support. Together, we faced the storm, the entity's fury manifesting as the lights flickered and the walls seemed to tremble. But amidst the chaos, a clarity emerged within me, a realization that the entity's power was fueled by my grief, my isolation. I envisioned your face, not as the entity had mimicked, but as the loving twin I remembered. I filled my heart with that love, a love untainted by sorrow or despair. With a final surge of will, I pushed through the darkness, the planchette moving under our collective force to bid the entity farewell. The air crackled with energy as the entity, weakened by our resolve, released its hold. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, as if a weight had been lifted from our shoulders. We sat in silence, the aftermath of our confrontation settling around us. The planchette was still, and the eerie whispers had ceased. Mrs. Thompson nodded in approval, her eyes reflecting pride and relief. David and I shared a look, a mix of exhaustion and triumph in our gaze. In the days that followed, the house felt lighter, free of the shadow that had loomed over it. The Ouija board was destroyed, its pieces scattered to the four winds, ensuring it could never be used to harm again. David, Mrs. Thompson, and I occasionally spoke of that night, but mostly we focused on the future, on healing. I began to paint again, filling canvases with colors and shapes that spoke of hope and resilience. Our encounter with the entity had changed us all, but for me, it was a journey back from the brink. I had faced my deepest fears, my grief, and emerged stronger for it. The loss of you would always be a part of me, but I had learned to carry it not as a burden, but as a testament to our unbreakable bond. As the story of that night fades into memory, one truth remains clear. In the face of darkness, it is love and the strength found in unity that shines the brightest.
The move to Hallwood was supposed to be a new chapter for me, a turn into a quieter life after the relentless pace of city living. The small town, nestled between whispering forests and rolling hills, promised just that. But as I came to learn, it promised much more, hidden beneath layers of mystery and whispers. I arrived in the heart of autumn, the town swathed in hues of amber and gold, the annual Hallwood Fair in full swing. It was a spectacle of community spirit, with stalls of handicrafts, homemade delicacies, and laughter filling the air. Seeking to blend in, to notch a place for myself within these warm, welcoming scenes, I wandered the fairgrounds. That's when I stumbled upon it, the Whisper Game. Nestled between a booth selling artisanal candles and a carousel, the game's setup was modest. A circular table covered in a velvety black cloth, a modified Ouija board at its center, and a pair of antique-looking headphones resting atop. The sign, "Discover the Whispers of Hallwood," seemed almost inviting, a challenge to the rational part of me that scoffed at such parlor tricks. Yet the historian in me, fascinated by local customs and the human psyche, nudged me forward. "Don't walk past, give the game a try," coaxed the game's keeper, an elderly woman with a knowing smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. Her voice was soft, almost drowned out by the fair's jubilance, but it carried a strange weight. Before I could second guess, I found myself seated at the table, the headphones slipping over my ears, a blindfold blocking out the world. The whispers came softly at first, as if a secret being shared between close friends. Names, dates, places, all seemingly benign, but as they continued, a chill ran down my spine. The whispers knew too much, divulging secrets I'd locked away deep in my heart. I pulled off the headphones, my breaths quick and shallow, the fair's festive atmosphere suddenly suffocating. The days that followed were a blur of unease. The whispers didn't cease with the game, they followed me, threads of secrets weaving into the fabric of my daily life. Shadows danced at the corners of my vision, whispers brushing against my consciousness at the quietest moments. Determined to seek answers, I found myself one afternoon in the town's library, a charming structure of weathered bricks and aging books. It was there I met Jamie, the town's unofficial historian, buried in a mound of dusty tomes and local records. The Whisper Game, you say? Jamie's interest peaked, glasses sliding down the nose as those sharp blue eyes studied me, assessing. There's always been something off about that game. It's more than just a fair attraction. Our investigation began in earnest, sifting through archives and whispered rumors, a thread connecting past participants of the game to unsettling fates. It was during one of these long nights of research that we encountered Taylor, a vibrant soul with an infectious laugh, yet eyes shadowed by a recent brush with the Whisper Game. Tried it last year, on a dare, Taylor recounted, the levity fading at the memory. Thought it was all fun and games until, well, you know how it goes. The solidarity of shared experiences quickly bound us, Taylor's resilience and insight into the town's younger demographic proving invaluable. Together, we started to peel back the layers of tradition and secrecy that shrouded the Whisper Game, uncovering the unsettling reality of Hallwood's favorite pastime. Little did we know, the more we uncovered, the deeper we delved into the heart of the town's darkness, the more we found ourselves entangled in a web of history, mystery, and whispers that refused to be silenced. Our investigation led us down a labyrinth of whispers and shadows, each revelation more unnerving than the last. With Jamie's historical knowledge and Taylor's knack for rallying support, we began to stitch together the fabric of a town ensnared by its own traditions. But knowledge was not enough. We needed the town to listen, to see the harm wrought by the Whisper Game. The opportunity came with the announcement of a town hall meeting, an age-old tradition where grievances and proposals were aired before the community. It was our chance, perhaps our only one, to bring the dark underbelly of the Whisper Game into the harsh light of scrutiny. The evening of the meeting, the town hall, a relic of times past with its towering white columns and creaking wooden floors, was abuzz with anticipation. Members of the community filled every available seat, murmurs and whispers blending into a cacophony of curiosity and concern. With a heavy heart and hands that trembled ever so slightly, I stood before the assembly, Jamie's reassuring presence to my right, Taylor's determined gaze burning from my left. The whisper game, I began, my voice steady despite the tumult of emotions raging within, is not a harmless tradition. It is a test, a judgment passed in whispers and shadows, leaving scars too deep for the eye to see. Our evidence was laid bare for all to scrutinize. Recordings of the whispers, testimonials from those brave enough to speak out, and historical patterns of exclusion masked as tradition. The crowd reacted with a spectrum of emotions, from disbelief to shock, anger to denial. But amid the chaos, there were nods of understanding, empathetic glances from those who had sensed the truth but had never dared to acknowledge it. The climax came not with a bang, but with a hushed silence that fell over the assembly as Taylor stepped forward, their voice clear and powerful. We are not against tradition, but against the harm it causes. We stand for a community that welcomes, not one that whispers in judgment. Our words were met not with immediate acceptance, but sparked a debate that raged long into the night. We had planted seeds of doubt, of questioning, a necessary discomfort to challenge the status quo. In the days that followed, the real battle began. Taylor used their influence to stir the younger population, engaging social media platforms to spread our message far beyond the confines of the town hall. Jamie and I, meanwhile, embarked on a clandestine mission to gather undeniable evidence. We slipped into the fairgrounds under the cover of night, the thrill of rebellion tinged with the fear of discovery, documenting the setup of the whisper game, capturing every whispered secret and shadowed corner. Our efforts culminated at the annual fair, the very heart of Hallwood's communal spirit and the battleground for our confrontation. With the community gathered, the air charged with anticipation and trepidation, we unveiled the truth of the whisper game for all to see. Faces in the crowd reflected every imaginable emotion as the reality of the tradition's harmful effects was laid bare. The moment was intense, emotional, and ultimately cathartic. Admitting to the pain caused by a cherished tradition was not easy for the town, but it was necessary. Some argued fervently against change, clinging to tradition as a lifeline to the past, but many more voiced their support for a new beginning. A dialogue had been opened, a path to healing forged from the very heart of conflict. In exposing the dark underbelly of the whisper game, we had not only shed light on a harmful practice, but also on the power of community to evolve, to redefine itself in the face of truth. The fight was far from over, but for the first time, there was hope for a future where whispers would no longer haunt the streets of Hallwood. As the dust settled from the confrontation at the fair, it became clear that Hallwood was on the cusp of change. The tradition of the whisper game was halted, not by decree, but by a collective realization of its insidious impact. It was a victory, hard-won and bittersweet, signaling the start of a long journey toward healing and understanding. The weeks that followed were filled with introspection for many within the community. Conversations that had once been whispered in dark corners now took place in the open, a testament to the power of truth to foster openness and dialogue. Amid this transformative period, Jamie, Taylor, and I found ourselves at the heart of a new movement, one that sought to redefine what it meant to be part of Hallwood. Our next step was to organize a community gathering, not under the guise of a fair or festival, but as an open forum for expression, healing, and rebuilding. The town square, once the stage for the whisper game, was transformed into a space of unity and support. Strings of warm lights crisscrossed above, illuminating faces that showed cautious optimism, resilience, and a shared determination to move forward. As the gathering unfolded, the air filled with the sounds of honest conversations, laughter, and even tears. It was a cathartic release for many, a chance to voice long-suppressed fears, hopes, and dreams for the future. Taylor led workshops on empathy and solidarity, their vibrant energy infectious, drawing even the most reserved individuals out of their shells. Jamie, with their wealth of historical knowledge, guided discussions on the importance of preserving tradition while ensuring it serves the well-being of all members of the community. And then, there was me. Standing in the town square, I felt a sense of belonging that had eluded me since my arrival in Hallwood. I realized that my journey to this moment, fraught with fear and uncertainty, had not only been about uncovering the truth of the Whisper Game. It had been about finding my place within a community, about understanding that change, while daunting, can pave the way for something far greater. The gathering had not erased the pain and division wrought by the Whisper Game, but it had laid the groundwork for reconciliation and growth. As the evening drew to a close, Jamie, Taylor, and I stood together, observing the scene before us. A community united, not by tradition or fear, but by a shared desire for a brighter, but more inclusive future. In the days that followed, the impact of our efforts became increasingly evident. The tradition of the Whisper Game was remembered not as a festering wound, but as a turning point for Hallwood. New traditions began to emerge, ones that celebrated inclusivity, understanding, and the collective strength of a community willing to confront its shortcomings. For me, Hallwood was no longer just a place of whispers and shadows. It had become home, a testament to the idea that even the smallest voices, when united, can instigate profound change. And as I walked the streets, now filled with the sounds of laughter and conversation rather than ominous whispers, I knew that this was only the beginning. The Whisper Game had ended, but the true game, the game of building a community rooted in empathy, understanding, and resilience, was just getting started. And I, along with Jamie, Taylor, and the entire town, was ready to play.
Our town, nestled in the heart of nowhere, thrived on simplicity and routine. Lives intertwined like the ivy on the old mill's walls. Everyone knew everyone. And secrets? They were just stories waiting to be told. I, with my adventurous heart, found solace in the familiar, until that autumn day that veered my life into the unknown. Michael, Harper, and I decided to explore the abandoned mill on the edge of town, a place shrouded in tales and warnings, making it irresistible to our curious minds. We joked and dared each other forward, our laughter echoing off the crumbling walls. It was Michael who found it first, obscured by dust and shadows, a Ouija board. Its surface was worn, letters barely visible, but the invitation to the beyond, or so we thought, was clear. Our excitement was a live wire, sparking with the thrill of forbidden mystery. Little did we know we were about to uncover more than just idle spirits. We decided to wait until nightfall to use it, gathering in Harper's living room, the only light coming from the flickering candles we placed around the room. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation, a silent fourth participant in our little group. As we placed our fingers on the planchette, I remember joking, "Let's not summon anything we can't put back." Harper shot me a nervous smile, the thrill of fear evident in her eyes. The events that followed felt removed from reality, like watching a play where you're unwittingly cast as the lead. The planchette moved with a hesitant grace, spelling out a name, then an accusation. A prominent family, pillars of our community, harboring a dark secret. We sat in stunned silence, the weight of the revelation pressing down on us. It was our first brush with the board's power, our innocence crumbling under the gravity of our discovery. The secret spilled like poison, seeping through the cracks of facades and polite smiles. It didn't take long for the whispers to start, for looks to be exchanged over fence posts and through curtained windows. Michael, ever the defender of truth, found himself entangled in heated disputes, his once friendly banter with townsfolk turning to confrontations. I watched from the sidelines, the unity of our community unraveling before my eyes, the thread of harmony pulled loose by our reckless curiosity. Our bond, the three of us, began to strain under the pressure of judgment and fear. The joy of discovery soured into regret, the Ouija board now a symbol of our folly rather than adventure. We hadn't just uncovered a secret, we'd unearthed the fragile underbelly of our town, exposing the raw, hidden truths we weren't prepared to face. Our descent into the unknown had only just begun, the path ahead shrouded in the shadows of our own making. The fallout from our recklessness was swift, its tendrils creeping into every friendship, every whispered conversation at the local diner, every sidelong glance at the grocery store. Our little experiment had transformed into a community-wide witch hunt, with suspicion clouding the air like the autumn fog that rolled off the lake each morning. It was during one of our nightly sessions, the air thick with desperation to fix what we had broken, that the Ouija board turned on me. The planchette, guided by an unseen force, spelled out a secret, A confession, really, tightly coiled within me. My secret. My heart pounded as the word thief was followed by an incident I had long buried beneath layers of guilt and justification. I pleaded with the board, with Michael and Harper, to believe my innocence, that the context was missing, but the damage was irrevocable. In the span of a few heartbeats, I went from accuser to accused, the spotlight of the town's moral judgment glaring cruelly in my direction. The rift this caused was palpable. Michael, ever the pillar, tried to mediate, but the ground between us had shifted. Our solidarity, once unbreakable, now showed its cracks. Harper, with her shadowed eyes, retreated further into her obsession with the board, convinced it was our key to redemption. Determined to confront Harper and salvage what remained of our friendship, I found her surrounded by ancient texts and flickering candlelight, the board at the centerpiece of her frenzied quest for answers. Our conversation, if it could be called that, was strained, a tug of war between reason and obsession. Harper's accusations stung, her words laced with the poison of doubt and fear. "It's revealing our truths," she claimed, her voice a mix of hysteria and conviction. "Yours, mine, all of ours. It's cleansing us." I watched as the friend I knew disappeared before my eyes, replaced by a stranger fanatic in her beliefs. Alone, pondering the chasm that had opened beneath my feet, I sought solace in the place where it all began, the abandoned mill. The walls, once whispering with the promise of adventure, now stood silent, judgmental. As I touched the cold surface of the Ouija board, an epiphany struck me like a jolt of lightning. The horror wasn't in spirits or malevolent forces. It lay within us. Our curiosity, our fear, our guilt had given life to something far more terrifying than any ghost. The darkness wasn't at our doorstep. It was in the mirror. This realization was a bitter pill, swallowing the last of my innocence whole. The night outside mirrored my turmoil, the wind echoing through the skeletal branches of long-dead trees. I had sought answers, but instead I found only the reflection of our own human frailty. The only spirits we had conjured were the specters of our own secrets, howling in the dark. In the wake of my realization, the mill felt like a mausoleum, housing the death of innocence and the birth of hard-won knowledge. The night air was sharp as I made my way back to what I no longer felt could be called home. The town, once a tapestry of warmth and shared history, now seemed a labyrinth of shadows and whispered accusations. I attempted reconciliation, first with Harper and Michael, their faces etched in the dim light of mistrust and hurt. Harper's obsession with the Ouija board had left her a shell, her belief in its revelations unshaken despite everything. Michael, caught between his instincts to protect and his own sense of betrayal, wavered like a candle in the wind. Our meeting was a tableau of what might have been, a semblance of friendship marred by the scars of secrets dragged into the unforgiving light. My efforts to mend the broader tears in the community fabric fared no better. The secrets unearthed had acted as a catalyst, revealing the fault lines that had long lurked beneath the surface of our small-town idyll. Accusations had led to confrontation, friendships undone by the harsh glare of truth, and at the center of it all was me, the unwitting harbinger of chaos. The decision to leave was not made lightly. Each step away from the life I had known was a weight, a silent admission of defeat. My departure was greeted with a mix of relief and disdain, a reflection of the ire I had drawn. The town's outskirts passed in a blur, the familiar landmarks now foreign, tainted by the fallout of our curiosity. The road stretched before me, leading away from a town hollowed out by secrets and lies. In the rearview mirror, I saw not just a place, but a part of myself receding into the distance. The lessons of the past weeks pressed heavily on me. The realization that some doors once opened can never be closed, that curiosity, while a beacon in the dark, can also lead one into the abyss. As I drove, the sun broke through the clouds, casting long shadows across the road. It was in this interplay of light and dark that I found a semblance of peace, an acceptance of the duality within each of us. The road ahead was uncertain, a path unmarked and daunting, yet it offered a chance at redemption, an opportunity to rebuild away from the ruins of what had been. In the end, the most haunting truths were those we held about ourselves. Our small town, with its tightly woven lies and half-truths, was a microcosm of the human experience, beautiful, flawed, and ultimately fragile. I carried with me the scars of our descent into the unknown, a reminder of the price of curiosity and the enduring strength it takes to face the ghosts of our own making.